Welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about top 10 facts about Iran-Russia relationship. So before starting this video, please like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. With the Safavids in power, relations between the Grand Duchy of Moscow and the Persian Empire, Iran, were officially established in 1521. Russian-Iranian relations have long been complex and multifaceted, swinging back and forth between partnership and rivalry. Geographic, economic and socio-political contact between the two countries has a long history. Mutual relations have been tumultuous at times and dormant at others. Since both Russia and Iran are sanctioned by most of the Western world, they serve as economic partners to one another. Number 10. In February 1979, the Soviet Union became the first country to recognize the Islamic Republic of Iran. It did, however, provide Saddam Hussein with significant numbers of conventional weapons during the Iran-Iraq War. Islam was considered incompatible with the Soviet Union's communist values such as atheism, by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, leaving the secular Saddam as a Moscow ally. During the war, however, the United States placed an arms embargo on Iran, and the Soviet Union supplied Iran with arms from North Korea. Number 9. Following the war, Iran signed an arms deal with the Soviet Union in 1989. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, diplomatic and commercial relations between Tehran and Moscow exploded, and Russia quickly inherited the Soviet-Iranian arms deals. By the mid-1990s, Russia had decided to begin working on Iran's nuclear program, with plans to complete the Bushehr nuclear reactor facility, which had been postponed for nearly 2 decades. Iran secretly supported Ossetian separatism against Georgia during the East Prigorodny conflict, and the Georgian-Ossetian conflict, siding with the Ossetians against the Ingush and Chechens. Number 8. As tensions between the United States and Iran increase, Iran is being forced even further into an alliance with Russia and China. Iran, like Russia, is concerned about Turkey's regional ambitions, and the spread of some kind of pan-Turkic ideology. Russia and Iran also have a shared interest in limiting the United States' political presence in Central Asia. As a result of their shared interests, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization granted Iran observer status in 2005 and full membership in 2006. Iran's relations with the organization, which is controlled by Russia and China, are the most comprehensive diplomatic ties the country has had since the revolution in 1979. Along with Qatar, Iran and Russia co-founded the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Number 7. Unlike previous years when Iran's Air Force and civilian air fleet were entirely Western-made, the Iranian Air Force and civilian air fleet are gradually being domestically and Russian-made, as the US and Europe retain sanctions against Iran. In 2010, Iran's failure to suspend uranium enrichment prompted the United Nations to adopt Resolution 1929, which prohibits the selling of all forms of heavy weapons, including missiles, to Iran. As a result, Iran's delivery of the S-300 system has been cancelled. President Dmitry Medvedev of Russia signed a decree in September 2010, preventing the supply of S-300 missile systems, armored vehicles, warplanes, helicopters and ships to Iran. Iran's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad also chastised Russia for bowing to the US. Iran filed a complaint against Russia in a Swiss court as a result of the cancellation, and Russia threatened to withdraw diplomatic support for Iran in the nuclear conflict in response to the lawsuit. Number 6. Since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011, Iran and Russia have emerged as Syria's key allies in the conflict, freely offering military support to the Syrian government. Meanwhile, due to the Ukraine crisis, the 2018 Skripal poisoning incident in the United Kingdom, and suspected Russian interference in Western politics, Russia's own relations with the West have deteriorated, causing the United States and Europe to retaliate with sanctions against Russia. As a result, Russia has shown a willingness to join a military alliance with Iran. Following the JCPOA agreement, President Vladimir Putin lifted the embargo in 2015, and the S-300 missile defense system contract with Iran was resurrected. The distribution was completed in November 2016, and a $10 billion contract for helicopters, aircraft and artillery systems was to follow. Number 5. In addition to their hydrocarbon trade and cooperation, Iran and Russia have extended their trade relations in a variety of non-energy sectors, including a major agriculture agreement in January 2009, and a telecommunications agreement in December 2008. Iran and Russia signed an agreement in July 2010 to expand their collaboration in the energy sector. The agreement involves the formation of a joint oil exchange, which has the potential to become a global leader with a combined output of up to 15 million barrels of oil per day. Gazprom and Lukoil have been more active in the production of Iranian oil and gas ventures in recent years. Russia was Iran's seventh largest trading partner in 2005, accounting for 5.33% of all exports to the world. The two countries' trade relationship grew from $1 billion in 2005 to $3.7 billion in 2008. Automobiles, fruits and vegetables, glass, textiles, plastics, chemicals, handwoven carpets, stone and plaster products were among the major non-oil exports from Iran to Russia. Since both countries are subject to US sanctions and are looking for new trade partners, relations between Russia and Iran have improved. In August 2014, the two countries concluded a landmark $20 billion oil for goods agreement. Number 4. There is of course the possibility that an Iranian dispute with Israel and/or Saudi Arabia will allow Putin to serve as a mediator. Many Russian analysts have pointed out that Moscow's willingness to speak to all sides in the Middle East, while Washington refuses to talk to Iran, allows it to play this role. However, merely being able to negotiate with both parties of a dispute does not mean that an outside force has the capacity to settle it. The Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, for example, were arranged not only because Washington was willing and able to speak to both sides, but also because Washington was able to provide both sides with considerable assistance, which the US continues to provide as a kind of inducement to make peace. Putin does not seem to be willing or able to give similar rewards to Iran and its adversaries at this time. Number 3. Moscow and Tehran disagree on a number of key topics. Russia has maintained strong ties with many of Iran's rivals, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Bahrain under Putin's leadership. There have been many irritants to their relations in the post-Soviet period, in addition to continuing Iranian frustration over losses, attacks, and support for Tehran's opponents in both the Tsarist and Soviet periods. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, they have been unable to agree on how to divide the Caspian Sea, and all the petroleum wealth underneath it, as well as Iranian frustration with Russia for its willingness to restrict, or even cancel both Russian weapons sales and nuclear cooperation with Iran in the past. Although Moscow claims to have succeeded in blocking and undermining Western-backed UN Security Council resolutions, placing sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program, Tehran has expressed resentment against Russia for supporting these resolutions, when it could have simply vetoed them. Number 2. In 2019, Russia exported approximately $426 billion to other countries, while importing approximately $247 billion in goods from other countries, resulting in a negative trade balance. China, Germany, Belarus, the United States, Italy, France, South Korea, Kazakhstan, and other countries have done the most business with Russia this year, with China accounting for the bulk of Russia's $247 billion in imports. In general, trade between Iran and Russia is a small percentage of global trade for the world's largest nation, which shares a maritime border with Iran through the Caspian Sea, and a small figure when compared to the two countries' comprehensive political security links. Iran and Russia, for example, had a trade turnover of $1.595 billion in 2019, with $1,198 million in exports to Iran, and $392 million in imports from Iran, according to official statistics. From 2005 to 2011, it was one of the strongest times of economic cooperation between Iran and Russia, with exchanges reaching more than $3.5 billion in 2010. Number 1. There are many big issues in the field of banking and finance that are keeping Iran and Russia from growing their trade. The first is the high cost of financing for Iranian exporters, with rates as high as 14%, 18% and 22% in the best-case scenario, restricting profit margins. As a result, many Iranian exporters and producers are initially skeptical about doing business with the government. On the other hand, not only is the sum and quality of incentive and support packages for producers and exporters in Iran inefficient and path-breaking, but even in cases such as high interest rates on bank facilities, which pose a serious barrier to exporters, since foreign trade with a country like Russia necessitates a large amount of financing. Banks in Iran, on the other hand, are less willing to pay long-term facilities to exporters and producers due to currency fluctuations, which decreases the flexibility of Iranian producers and exporters. What do you think about this video? Which of the following top 10 facts about Iran-Russia relationship you find most shocking? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.